Thanks for watching the Daily Debate live here on Nile TV International. It's Thursday. I'm Taghreed Hussein, and I have the pleasure of your company for the coming hour. We'll be talking about a very important headline, the fruits and the outcome of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's recent visit to India. So we're talking Egypt and India together forward ever. Strong and close friendship between both countries. It's the second visit for the president to India since he attended the India-Africa conference, and that was last October. Complimenting President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's leadership, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called him a man of many achievements, both at home and abroad. He added that Egypt itself is a natural bridge that connects Asia with Africa, and that the Egyptian people are the voice of moderate Islam. On the three-day visit to India by the president, he met with his Indian counterpart and Prime Minister Modi and Vice President Muhammad Ansari. This in addition to other top officials in India discussing various issues and files of mutual concern. And we have all the pleasure and honor to host His Excellency, India's Ambassador to Egypt, His Excellency Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya. Thank you so much for coming to Nile TV International and for being live with us on the debate tonight on the first exclusive interview after your return from India. Thank you, sir.
I'm delighted to be with you all and to share our experiences of this absolutely wonderful visit.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Bhattacharya. Always an honor and pleasure to have you, as I said, while viewing the importance of Egyptian-Indian relations, Egypt and India forward ever. Let's watch this report, and we'll be back to discuss more details of the visit and the outcome and the fruits, future cooperation prospects with His Excellency Ambassador of India to Egypt. Let's watch.
Of decisions to combat terrorism were taken in wide-range talks between President Fattah al-Sisi and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and that the two countries have been engaged in staving off the threat of extremism and radicalism. Identifying terrorism as one of the gravest threats, they decided to have greater information and operational exchanges apart from ramping up defense cooperation. A joint statement issued after the talks said the two leaders strongly condemned terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. They considered terrorism to be one of the gravest threats to international peace and security. They reaffirmed the resolve to strengthen cooperation in combating terrorism at all levels. Modi said both sides have also agreed on greater information and operational exchanges to combat terror. Cooperation on emerging challenges of cybersecurity and working together to fight drug trafficking, transnational crimes were other key decisions taken at the meeting. They also reaffirmed the resolve to work together at UN on concluding the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. These comments, Modi said that Egypt is a factor for regional peace and stability in Africa and the Arab world, that it always championed the cause of developing countries. The Prime Minister appreciated the good work Egypt has been doing during its current term on the UN Security Council, and said they agreed that the UN Security Council needs to be reformed to reflect the realities of today. Al-Sisi and Modi affirmed the need for a comprehensive and permanent solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict on the basis of the UN resolutions in implementation of the two-state principle, on the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestine state with East Jerusalem as its capital. They also emphasized the need for cessation of hostilities in Syria and expressed concern over humanitarian crisis in the country. They called for a comprehensive and peaceful resolution of the Syrian conflict through a Syrian-led political process, and expressed strong support for the people and the government of Iraq in their efforts to overcome the existing crisis to uphold national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Referring to defense ties, the two leaders welcomed deepening and expansion of defense relations through high-level visits, training exercises, transit facilities, and hardware cooperation.
We're back. A very important visit by the President. Excellency, it's the second visit in a year, and this in itself sends a message of significance of how important bilateral relations are between Egypt and India.
It is but natural. You know, although this is the second visit, this was the first state visit to India by President Sisi. And a state visit in the bilateral relations context has its own significance. And this was an affirmation of the two sides that we wish to take our relations further to a new higher level. He was received by the President at the President's palace, and then he held extensive discussions with both the President and the Prime Minister. This was a huge visit which has given new impetus to the relations and will be a landmark in our bilateral relations.
Definitely, bilateral relations on more than one dimension, the political dimension and the economic dimensions, starting with both leaders seeing eye to eye vis-a-vis the political relations between both countries. What was the main issues that were highlighted in meetings?
We actually see eye to eye on most issues, and this is the most beautiful part of our relationship, that there are no big contentious issues. On the political front, the two leaders reaffirmed their desire to have regular high-level political contacts, because it is extremely important that as we are in a very rapidly changing environment, both in the bilateral and regional context, that we be engaged.
Definitely.
And that we can exchange notes and continue to do that. We shall soon have the Joint Commission at the foreign ministers level. And what was also agreed is that we must give special focus to the security and defense cooperation. There was also very extensive discussion on the regional issues and how we can work together to bring about peace and stability.
Definitely, working together more closely is a win-win situation between both countries. And on the economic sphere, the sky is always the limit. Further investments. Tell me, Mr. Ambassador, about further focus on the economic sphere between both nations and Indian investments in the different projects. You know, Egypt is opening up to the whole world investment opportunities and facilities, name it, the new Suez Canal Access Project, East Port Said Harbor, and more. So tell me more about the Indian investments in those projects.
Quite right. You know, the economic engagement and scientific collaboration is the second pillar of our bilateral relations, but it is something that is acquiring even greater prominence, particularly because we are going through a period when there is a global slowdown. At the same time, world trade is slowing down. So it is important for us to engage bilaterally in a more constructive manner. I must say that of the various fields that the discussions were focused on, the economic field was one of those in which there was very great emphasis on both sides. You are aware that Indian industry is very keen to remain engaged in Egypt. We have about 50 companies with about $3 billion worth of investments. They bring in new management and technology, employ about 35,000 Egyptians, direct and indirect. And therefore, we are a sizable presence over here. But we would like it to be even wider because we believe the future is extremely bright. The President was extremely forthcoming and very generous in his time and his exhortations to the business community in telling them about the new priorities. The business community in India is looking forward to new opportunities over here.
Right, and the sky is always the limit, and the potential that Egypt offers definitely is going to provide incentives. How about incentives that were on the table? You said the President was generous in providing more incentives concerning the business atmosphere and the climate of investment in Egypt.
The President outlined his plan for Indian investments, and he assured them of the safety and security of their investments, which was extremely important from any investor's perspective. Coming from the President, it had a very special significance.
Right.
The President also outlined about the policy priorities of the government. We are noticing that Egypt is going through a process of reform and liberalization. We ourselves in India had gone through a similar process.
Right.
So we are familiar with these developments. And for us and our corporate sector, it is now familiar territory. Indians are not unfamiliar or unknown in Egypt, just as Egypt is not unknown in India. And so now we find greater synergies. I think we are looking at the opportunities in certain specific areas. In IT, education, health are some of the areas. SMEs are another focus areas. And a number of meetings were held. President met personally with the members of the Joint Business Council, as well as with separate groups of business houses who have a very large presence. And I think there has been very enthusiastic response on that front. We are looking forward to more collaborative projects.
Definitely looking forward to more collaborative projects, and we have more on the table, Excellency. We have more concerning education, concerning space, and tourism is also quite important, plus culture and speaking about festivals and similarities between both nations. Let's go for a short break, and we will continue this exclusive interview with His Excellency Ambassador of India to Egypt, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, for the first exclusive interview after the latest presidential visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to India. Indian beat, and this definitely reflects on the people-to-people relations that we need always to explore, you know, Egyptians going to India and vice versa. Explore the potential of those two beautiful countries and the people themselves. How about the beat that we just listened to, Excellency?
This is a fantastic one that you had because it shows the diversity of India. It's a huge country with very many different ethnicities, religions, languages, culture, customs. But at the same time, it all unites together under one constitution, which makes us all Indian, and the sense of being India. And today, that is the most dominant thing. So unity in diversity had been a recurring theme in our development path, and today it's more true than ever.
Definitely. Beautiful timing as well. And the visit by the President came at an opportune time, as was described by the Indian press. Tell us, Excellency, about the reflection of the President's trip in the Indian press. How about the headlines? What did it came out with? What was the headlines of the Indian press stressing during the visit?
You know, there has been great anticipation about President Sisi's visit to India because Egypt has always been a very, very strong partner of India right through the decades after independence in particular. So there was great expectation and hope and anticipation. It started off with President Sisi's own message in one of the Indian newspapers, which carried out a message. And for the people of India, it could not have been a different message because the message from the Egyptian president was absolutely similar to what the Indian Prime Minister and President have been saying. My Prime Minister has often said that we have a very beautiful relationship with the civilizational partnership, but we are in a new century and we have new challenges and new opportunities. And Egypt and India, as two civilizational standard bearers, have this responsibility to create this new partnership in the new era. And I think that's what the focus of a lot of the discussion was, on how do we craft this new partnership in the new era.
Yeah. How are we going to craft this new partnership, Excellency? What are the dimensions that we are going to work on? And how about the follow-up mechanism after this important visit so that we would take those relations into the spheres that we always aspire?
As you know, we issued a joint statement between India and Egypt at the conclusion of the visit. And the joint statement states the desire and the conviction of the two leaders to have our relations built in this framework. And it has three important pillars. The first of political security cooperation, the second of economic engagement and scientific collaboration, and the third of cultural exchanges and people-to-people contacts. These are the basic building blocks. What President Sisi and my leaders did was, during their discussions, they filled in the building blocks of what we will do in these each of these areas. And it was a very, very fruitful one with a lot of concrete ideas, many of which are reflected in the joint statement as well. And that's how we will take this relationship forward. The Joint Commission will be the first session that we will have to take this agenda forward. And then, of course, we will have other mechanisms to implement the decisions of the two leaders.
Yes, we can feel the warm relations definitely, and the reception itself, speaking heart to heart concerning the coming stage and how are we going to take further relations forward, bearing into consideration the challenges of the region of the Middle East and the whole world, and our sense of cooperation also in combating a phenomena that targets the whole world, which is terrorism. Seeing eye to eye in that respect, what came out of those meetings?
You know, you mentioned about the remarkable chemistry between the leaders, and that's a very telling one. It is seen in the manner in which my president and prime minister engaged with President Sisi. On the very important aspect of security cooperation, we are faced with this challenge of terrorism. We are facing a situation where young people are getting radicalized, turning to extremism and violence. And I think we have to take measures. It is not something that affects just one country or one society. It is something that affects all of us. We in India have faced this for ever since independence. We faced cross-border terrorism. It's a more recent phenomena in this region, in the Middle East. But it's something that has its impact all over. This was a central theme in the discussions at the leadership levels. As you know, our national security advisors have had discussions earlier this year, and they had signed a memorandum on security cooperation so that we can collate our forces and our sharing of information so that we can have a more concerted effort towards this. In addition to bilateral cooperation on countering terrorism, it is also very necessary to have regional and multilateral initiatives. As you know, at the United Nations, there is a comprehensive convention on international terrorism that is currently under discussion. And it is important for all of us to put our forces together so that we have consensus on this, so that there is a multilateral effort to tackle this particular menace. This also has to be tackled at the different levels of the NGOs. And we have a dialogue with Al-Azhar on this, because Al-Azhar is a highly regarded center of religious thought and belief, and also has a moderate view and a more holistic perspective of how religion evolved and its place. And so through these various interactions, we will work out a mechanism which will tackle this very, very dreadful menace. The leaders were convinced that we cannot allow them to overtake us, and we must stay one step ahead of this menace of terrorism.
Definitely, and this gives us like a link also with taking care of the youth, because they are the target for any sort of brainwashing or radicalism. And both nations were keen to discuss more concerning science and technology, concerning the brains, putting brains together, and thinking out of the box also concerning educational schemes, which was really quite interesting, and talking also about a medical city.
That's true. You know, at the end of the day, if we have a development path which can excite the young people, they will be more tempted to go along that path rather than the one of violence and extremism. But it's a huge challenge for developing countries like us. We have, as I said, established this mechanism with Azhar, but we also have to work at the other levels that you talked about. Education, development, the propagation of scientific temper and scientific research is something that will provide alternatives and also provide great opportunities for growth and development of our economies. We are also looking at mechanisms in which we will collaborate in the economic field, in the field of SMEs. And this will include things like skills, entrepreneurship, so that there is more employment of the young people in the SMEs. And space is, for instance, a very exciting area in which we will also work on. Education is one, and we are looking at the possibility of establishing or collaborating on an Indian university as well.
And that's great news. Actually, it's also something that is considered to be something we're looking for, we as people, because since there will be collaboration in education, so this will definitely bring people together and cultures together. Short break and we'll be back. So, Excellency, we were talking about feeling the spirit of India as the clip just showed, this sense of diversity of a nation and this sense of admiration of everything that is beautiful. We saw the prayers and we are like approaching Eid al-Adha, so definitely there would be quite festivities for that Muslim holiday. And we've seen in a way or another a catchy footage that reflects more of an extension of a welcoming note to everybody. This is India, the peaceful welcoming note to everybody around. Well, how about packages of attraction, tourism-wise, between both nations? Was that on the table? Definitely, it should be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, we believe that the fundamental relations between any two nations is the relations and the exchanges between people. And tourism, of course, is an extremely important element of that. You know, while the growth in tourism, particularly from India to Egypt, has been very high, the actual volume of numbers has been something that we can certainly improve upon. And this was touched upon. And I think we are looking at the possibilities of closer coordination and more programs so that there is even greater tourism flows between the two people. But it's a wider ambit, the thing of people-to-people exchanges. And I think academic exchanges, exchanges of experts, cultural exchanges are all part of that. What we did during the visit was bring out the point that under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, ITEC as we call it, we used to have about 80 Egyptians who used to go out to India every year for short-term programs. This was increased to 110 last year. And our intention is to increase it to 150 and then to 200 over a period of time, depending on the capacity to take it, because this will bring about people in diverse fields as accounting, management, IT. The second area that we are looking at is that we are trying to bring about scholarship programs under ICCR, where Egyptian friends can go to India and do undergraduate, graduate courses. And we've offered the C.V. Raman Fellowship. C.V. Raman, as you know, was the first Asian to win a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1932. So in his name, we have the C.V. Raman Fellowship, and I'm very excited that there are 6 Egyptian scholars who will be traveling to India during the course of the year. So there are various aspects in which we are trying to build these networks. And on the other side, in Egypt, we have set up a network, we have set up an Indian chair at the Ain Shams University. In fact, it's the first Indian chair in the entire Arab world. And of course, it had to be in Egypt. And a professor of biotechnology from the leading institute.
That's the headline, Excellency. The first Indian chair in Ain Shams University and the first of its kind in the Arab world.
That is
wow,
right.
What's a great achievement.
Exactly. And it's going to be a professor of biotechnology who will be coming because we are prepared to share our best and what the university would wish to have. And that's going to extend the collaboration of the people-to-people exchanges enormously.
And do you think, Excellency, that this is an introductory step for a further expansion concerning the Indian university later? And how about the different branches that such a university would collaborate? What is the vision regarding the sense of expansion?
Yeah, you know, what I've seen over the last year and a half that I've been here and we've been promoting is to build as many linkages as possible. On the one hand, I see that there is some amount of study of Indian technology and the books of many written by many Indian professors are taught in the technology institutes over here. So there's one aspect which I think we can develop very close links on: technology, management, IT. These are areas in which India has very strong competence: mathematics, the sciences. And what we have found is that in many of the private universities in Egypt, there is great interest to go across, recruit Indian professors and bring them back to Egypt. So this is a trend that has already begun, and I'm very, very happy about that. The other is that we have a distance learning mechanism in which we have a Pan-Africa project in which we have tele-education.
Yeah.
And we do it in two fields, in the field of management and in the field of economics. And this is out of Alexandria University, and they're tied up with 3 different universities in India. And it's become a growing popularity, And I'm very, very happy to see that, it's the recognition of degrees has now been sorted out, so people can actually benefit from this program. The discussions on the establishment of an Indian university are the next logical step, as you mentioned. And we hope to see that this will take forward. We would also like to see greater study and exchanges on Indian history, civilization, sociology, politics. In other words, a school of Indian studies at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that would bring people much closer. I'm very happy that, we have a culture center over here which teaches Indian languages, Hindi and Urdu. And we have a number of students over there, over 100 actually.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited that 6 of them are currently in India doing an advanced course in Indian languages.
Yeah.
So when they come back, they will bring with them their experiences.
Definitely a sharing of experiences in Indian university would be a plus. And also tele-education is something new in the relations. And this sense of competence, of course, making use of the Indian technology and the experience in the field of IT management is definitely also a plus between both nations. Let's watch this report highlighting further cooperation between Egypt and India, and we'll be back with this important exclusive interview with His Excellency Ambassador of India to Egypt, Sanjay Bhattacharya, and stay with us.
President Fattah al-Sisi signed a maritime transportation agreement with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi on Friday after discussing Egypt and India's bilateral relations. Following the meeting, al-Sisi held a joint press conference with the Indian Prime Minister. The President expressed his happiness about visiting India after he was invited by his Indian counterpart. Al-Sisi said that both countries were keen on strengthening their relations and cooperation given the increase of threats and common challenges, ranging from terrorism and extremism to climate change and the need of sustainable energy sources for future generations. The two sides agreed to cooperate on a number of issues, as working on an integrated plan to upgrade the economic and trade cooperation. Both countries want to intensify mutual investments and promote the exchange of expertise in various areas of development. Referring to trade, the joint statement said the two leaders welcomed the expansion of Indian investments in Egypt, which is currently about $3 billion. Modi welcomed Egyptian investments in India under the Make in India initiative in the manufacturing and services sectors. President al-Sisi hailed Indian participation in the Suez Canal economic zone, particularly in sectors as petrochemicals, energy, and agriculture. Additionally, the countries decided to strengthen cultural and tourism ties, as well as scientific and technological cooperation, particularly in the areas of renewable energy, information and communications, and space technology. India also welcomed Egypt's participation at the G20 summit. On Thursday, al-Sisi met with Indian External Affairs Minister to discuss ways of developing bilateral relations in various fields, especially through trade cooperation and increasing the number of Indian tourists to Egypt. President al-Sisi and the Indian leadership said they recognize that strong trade and investment linkages are essential for economic prosperity of both nations, and agreed that increased flow of goods, services, and capital between the two economies has to be among their key priorities. For India, Egypt is a strategically located country which is a crucial link between Northeast Africa and the Middle East.
So, Excellency, talking about this important agreement in the field of maritime transport, that was definitely also a leap forward in relations, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Because we are now in an interconnected, globalized world, and since our relationship is very, very old, we've had a large number of agreements signed since the beginning of our independence time. The Maritime Transport Agreement opens up new opportunities in terms of bilateral cooperation, with the Suez Canal being the very important waterway and hub, logistics hub as well as manufacturing hub. This particular agreement acquires even greater importance.
Definitely, and also another field which is a pact for future generations, talking about climate change and the challenges that it poses to humanity at large.
You know, at the same time, while India and Egypt work on various bilateral issues, there is this great responsibility on both the countries to work and collaborate actively on several multilateral issues. Climate change is by far one of the most significant, because this is something that also affects the lives of our people, and we need to develop a common theme. We also worked very closely on how we respond to other issues. We talked about terrorism earlier, which is also a global challenge. How we deal with the restructuring of the international multilateral organizations,
right,
including the UN, for instance, is a very important issue ahead of both of us, so that they are truly representative of the realities of the changes in geopolitics and how the developing countries today are in a very different situation from the past.
And how about space technology, which is actually an area which is rapidly changing? Every day there is something new and new surprises in that area. What sort of support can India offer in that respect?
We are, of course, very excited that Egypt is forming the space agency, because that will give it tremendous autonomy in developing the space program. We are ready to work with Egypt. We already have a joint working group in the field of space, and they are working on a number of collaborative projects. There are three principal areas in which India and Egypt can work very closely together. The first is in the fabrication and launch of satellites. We have very, very good core competence in both these areas. We launch satellites for a large number of countries, including the United States. And we have very reliable rockets to do this. The second area in which we can work very closely together is in space data. For instance, remote sensing data, meteorology data, communications facilities through the satellites, because these actually have a direct impact on the lives of common people. So remote sensing data can be used for agriculture, urban planning, various other kinds of things. Communications data is for all your TV channels. We use it even for education. The tele-education that I mentioned about uses that kind of data. And the third kind of area in which we can work, and particularly as your space agency takes off, will be in outer space, because that is really the frontier of the future. We have had two very successful missions, one to the moon, the other one more recently to the Mars. How we collate data. We're also developing our own GPS. It's called Navik. And we can collaborate on that as well. So there are many aspects of space collaboration, but we should focus perhaps first on those which have a direct impact on the lives of people. And we'd be very happy to work with our Egyptian friends and scientists on this.
And it will make a difference and reflect, of course, because it is going to touch the daily lives of the people. Excellency, you'll be talking about the third pillar that Your Excellency talked about, the cultural and people-to-people relations. Very important that both nations should come closer and that people would know more about India. Egyptians are very much interested in the Indian culture, the Indian cuisine and the music, Bollywood and everything. So Indian history and the School of the Indian Studies, we need to know more about that, but we'll be back in a short break. So, Excellency, the cultural beat of the story is also very important because it brings people together, exploring the Egyptian culture and the Indian culture. And you were mentioning, Excellency, that there are visits and performers from India coming to Egypt at the Cultural Center and performing. And tell me more about the reception of such performances. How far are Egyptians interacting with the beat, the music, and how about Bollywood stars? Are they coming as well?
Well, I must say that the cultural relations are the most beautiful part of any relationship. And secondly, in many ways, they provide the foundation on which people begin to understand, to know each other, and build enduring relations. And this is one in which I think we've had a great degree of satisfaction. The reason for this is I suspect that in many ways Indians and Egyptians are very similar. We are both ancient civilizations. We have similar societies. Our approach to families are the same. The way we deal with and interact with friends are similar. The way we like to go out and have fun is also similar. So it's not surprising that Bollywood movies are popular in Egypt. Indian TV serials are making a headway over here. But there's much more that can be done, and we'd like to do that.
And in the field of media cooperation as well.
That is something that I feel we really need to put in concerted effort, because we haven't had the kind of exchanges that I would have wished to see. But that's an agenda for the future. For the present, I am really focused on looking at how we reach out to the Egyptian youth in particular.
Definitely.
Because the youth in any country form the basis of society, and they are the future. We have a number of programs that we do for the youth. I think one of the flagship programs that we have is called the Glimpses of India Painting Competition.
Yeah.
It is something in which we invite school children, Egyptian school children, to come and paint on India-Egypt relations. And we had 4,700 participants last year. This year we are taking it not just in Cairo, but to 6 cities across Egypt. And this is going to be a fantastic experience, because for one day, all the children will be connected on how India and Egypt interact. I must be very frank in admitting that we've received the warmest hospitality from the Egyptian people and Egyptian organizations in bringing our cultural troops across. So the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Antiquity, the Ministry of Tourism have been extremely kind and generous. The Cairo Opera House, under its very able leadership, has been our pillar of support for many of the events that we do, and we are extremely grateful to the support that we get from them. We've also been able to go out to the different governorates and perform at the cultural palaces, and I am very happy for the personal interest that many of the governors have taken in the Indian cultural activities. And we promise to bring more. As you would have noticed, we are a very diverse country. Bollywood is very, very popular, but there is a lot more beyond Bollywood. And it is my endeavor and the endeavor of my country to bring more experiences of what is Bollywood plus.
Oh, definitely, and we're looking forward to that. It has a different reception here in Egypt. We're looking forward to that. Excellency, we're celebrating Eid al-Adha, and Eid al-Adha is the feast of sacrifice, and it comes in like a couple of days. Well, congratulations and many happy returns for all Muslims throughout the whole world celebrating the occasion of Eid al-Adha, the Feast of Sacrifice. Let's see a glimpse of how Muslim festivals are celebrated in India as well, and we'll be back for further discussion. So that's the spirit of Eid and Muslim festivities in India. That's the largest mosque, Excellency, in India.
That is indeed. It's called the Jama Masjid in the city of Delhi. It was built in the 16th century by Shah Jahan, who built the Red Fort, and this is right in front of the Red Fort. And right next to it is a huge marketplace, a very old marketplace, which is called Chandni Chowk. Chandni Chowk being the street of the moon. And it's a very beautiful place because they would see the Eid moon from that place.
All right, so it has a historic significance as well, and this is the place where the Muslim community gather in Eid prayers usually, right?
as well. As you know, we have a very large Muslim community, about 180 million Muslims in India. It's the second largest Muslim population in the world. And we also have a very old history of Islam, because Islam came to India in the lifetime of the Prophet himself.
Right.
So we have a very, very old tradition. But it's a very interesting Islam, which has got a more syncretic approach, which has lived and coexisted with the various other religions of India.
Right.
And it's a beautiful experience where, particularly during the Eids, when all the different communities come together and share their experiences.
Yes, definitely. And we can see the sense of greetings, the people meeting together. The venue itself is quite different. In Eid al-Adha, or the field of sacrifice, is it similar to the celebrations that we do have in Egypt?
I believe it is, because that particular practice is quite similar. In most cases, there is the sacrifice of the goat in India.
In India, yeah.
And then it is the meat is shared with friends and other people in the community. And at the end of the day, people go to the mosque again and offer their prayers. And you saw those signs, you know, those visuals of what a huge community it is.
It is.
And then there is, of course, the feast at the end of it.
Yeah, a lovely feast, and happy feast to all our viewers. Excellency, finally, in the wrap-up of this beautiful episode, and since you're with us, what a lovely coincidence that while we are celebrating feast, a message that Your Excellency would love to direct to Muslims all over the world and in India celebrating the feast, and from Egypt, what would you tell them?
I would first say that religion is the message of love and peace and brotherhood, and all religions essentially have the same belief. And in India, we have this experience where we all coexist in the different religions, and that is the diversity which gives us the strength of India. On this very auspicious occasion of Eid, I would wish to greet Eid Mubarak to all our friends, and I would wish to say that you have the time with your family and friends, and you come back energized for the rest of the year.
Definitely, and we are looking forward to coming energized for more work to come, and definitely for more opportunities that has opened during the President's visit between both nations, Egypt and India, forward ever in a sense of close friendship and cooperation. Excellency, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, Indian Ambassador to Egypt, thank you so much for coming to Nile TV International tonight, and for this exclusive interview, the first after the presidential visit to India. Thank you, Excellency, for this opportunity.
It's been a great pleasure. The visit of President Sisi was a landmark, and it's set the tone for this new partnership in the new era. We're all looking forward excitedly towards implementing the agenda that has been laid out.
Definitely looking forward. Egypt and India, close friendship and sense of cooperation. Definitely the sky is the limit. Forward ever, both nations. I'm Taghreed Hussein, thanking you all for watching and wishing you a very happy Eid.